Good morning to all of you. This is Jamaica Live. We're on Bridge 99. I'm Bruce Schooling. I want to welcome you to the program. After 12, we'll also welcome the members of the Jamaican community in New York, because we're going to be linking with Irie Jam so we can be heard throughout that New York area. Start of a new month. Year is moving at rapid pace. Certainly, when you get to my age, it seems so. But welcome once again to the program. One of the indisputable things about us Jamaicans is our exceptionalism. In many areas, we are world beaters. And where we don't beat the rest of the world, we are world rankers. Not all of our exceptionalism is anything to be proud of. We have the second highest murder rate in the world. That is bad exceptionalism. Shameful exceptionalism. In terms of income inequality, the situation where a minority of people control most of the wealth of the country. We are among the 30 worst countries in the world in terms of income inequality. That isn't anything to be proud about either. And yet there are aspects of our exceptionalism that make us extremely proud. Marcus Garvey was a son of our soil, born in St. Anne's Bay. He was the first person to have placed the cause of black liberation and black nationalism at a global level, on a global agenda. More than 80 years after his death, Marcus Garvey is still revered throughout the continent of Africa and among black people, wherever in the world they reside. Our reggae music is recognized virtually everywhere in the world, even countries with stringent cultural restrictions, like Saudi Arabia. All of their restrictions couldn't block out Jamaican reggae music. One area in which we have demonstrated our exceptionalism, if you pardon the expression, is in athletics. Which country of our size has ever produced at one and the same time the fastest man in the world and the fastest woman in the world? And we did it not once, not twice, but 3 times. What accounts for this? Is it something in our genes? I don't think so. That certainly has not been scientifically, genetically established. Is it something we eat? Something in our diet? I don't think so either. This argument that it is a yam from Trelawney that makes Usain Bolt run so fast, that argument is foolishness. These arguments detract from the enormous work that was done over almost a century by people like G.C. Foster, Ted Lamont, Foggy Burroughs, Karl March. G.C. Foster, for example, coached the Jamaican athletes who competed in the Central American Games in Havana, Cuba, in 1930. I think that was the first time we sent an athletic team abroad to compete. That is more than 90 years ago. Nor must we ever find or entertain or embrace or give any credence to spurious arguments to unexplain the dedication and the hard work of trailblazers like George Roden, Herb McKinley, Arthur Wint, Les Leng, who gave us our first Olympic gold medal at Helsinki in 1952. Many others have followed in their glorious footsteps. The Spence twins, Mal and Mel, George Carr, Carmen Smith, Una Morris, Lynn Headley, Lennox Miller, Michael Frey. Then there were Don Quarry, Bert Cameron, Merle Notty, Grace Jackson, Juliet Cuthbert, Jacqueline Pusey, Raymond Stewart, Beverly McDonald, Danny McFarlane, Greg Horton, Eileen Bailey, Lord have mercy, Merlene Fraser, Dion Hemmings, Veronica Campbell-Brown, Bridget Foster Hilton, Sharon Simpson, Maurice Wignall, and then our more recent crop, Usain Bolt, Asafa Powell, Johan Blake, Shelly-Ann Fraser Pryce, Elaine Thompson Hera, Karen Stewart, Sharika Williams, Megan Tapper, Hansel Parchment, Nesta Carter, Milane Walker, Michael Frater. I'm getting myself into trouble because there are so many sterling performers that I have left out, not to mention those who have done well in field events, like James Beckford in the long jump. We cannot leave out the coaches who have been so critical to the success of our athletes, people like Glenn Mills, Stephen Francis, Fitz Coleman, Michael Vassell, Maurice Wilson, Julian Robinson, Gregory Little, Ronaldo Walcott, and before them people like Pablo McNeil and Dennis Johnson, and of course the high school coaches who do so much to prepare our athletes for future Olympics and World Championship glory. Michael Dyke, Corey Bennett, people like Michael Clark, Neil Harrison, Leaford Grant, and the list goes on. Something that is not sufficiently recognized is that most of our school coaches are products of the G.C. Foster College, which also produces coaches in football, in cricket, and other sporting disciplines. We talk a lot about what is wrong with Jamaica. We must pause and recognize the good work that institutions like G.C. Foster College is doing. Important in our amazing achievements are our sports administrators, our athletics administrators, the people involved in the Jamaica Olympics Association, the J3As, which was formerly the Jamaica Amateur Athletic Association, but now known as the Jamaica Athletics Administrative Association, JATAFCA, the Jamaica Track and Field Coaches Association, people like Mike Fennel, who we hope to be talking with later, Dr. Warren Blake, Ludlow Watt, Dan Anderson, Don Quarry, Garth Gale, Helene Francis. I mean, some of those names don't mean a lot to many of us, but those are the people behind the scenes who put so much work into pulling this thing all together. How have we, a small country like ours, how have we been able to achieve so much? What are the success factors? What has made us so successful in athletics? What must we do to ensure that we continue on this path of exceptionalism? Is there more that we can and need to do to expand the opportunities for our athletes? Are we leveraging this success to maximize the benefits for Jamaica? We're going to be talking to some of the most knowledgeable people in the area of athletics. I'm looking forward to those discussions, and I hope you too are looking forward to it when we come back. Welcome back. It's Jamaica Live. We're on Bridge 99, broadcasting here from Kingston, and we'll be linking shortly with Iri Jam in New York, so that we'll be broadcasting there as well. We're talking about athletics today, our athletic prowess, what I've chosen to call our athletics exceptionalism. And my first guest on the program is someone who, I can't think of anybody who has made a more outstanding contribution over as prolonged a period of time to Jamaica's athletic development and success than the Honorable Mike Fennel, who served for many years as president of the Jamaica Olympics Association, and most recently, he was in charge of the organization for the Carifta Games and all the reviews and the appraisals of those games, how they were executed, including from the president of the international, World Athletics, spoke about how amazingly efficient the arrangements were for the conduct of those games. So I'm so pleased to have joined me on the program the Honorable Mike Fennel. Mr. Mike Fennel, welcome to the program.
Morning, sir, and thank you very much for having me. It's good to speak with you again, and even on radio.
Happy to have you, Mike.
Thank you.
Mike, I posed a question today. Is there any one thing? I suspect there is not. But is there any one thing that can explain Jamaica's extraordinary achievements in world athletics?
I think you're right. It can't be any one thing. It's a whole range of influence, inputs, and supporting services that have to be included in the mix. Let me start in a peculiar way. And you probably said to yourself, why did I get involved after all these years and after so many different retirements? I came back and got involved with the Carifta Games. I was asked, and I had no hesitation because, as you know, we had a couple of years where they weren't held. And I responded positively because I am satisfied of the role that those games played in the development of young athletes. Now, how do I link that with your question? There were the days, as you will recall, when for an athlete, a track and field athlete had to develop, they had to compete abroad. We didn't have any competitions at home. We didn't have the broad level of coaching and so on. Now we have the coaching, but one of the important ingredients in any international sport is that you have to be competing continuously at the international level. And for Jamaica, for a long time, we had to get this abroad. Now we have this right at home. You don't have to find airfares, you don't have to find all housing, accommodation, all sorts of things. We have it right here at home because we've developed the capability of having these meets at home. And something like the Carifta Games, which plays such an important role, is right here at home, right in the region, and therefore it provides an opportunity for that phase of development, which is so essential if you want to go higher. So I've gone a roundabout way of trying to answer you as to one of the ingredients or some of the ingredients that are so essential.
Well, there are two aspects that I want to follow up with you on. One is, take for example our coaching. Isn't it amazing that we don't have to import athletics coaches? We have the best in the world. Isn't that by itself just an amazing achievement?
Absolutely.
And what accounts for that? Is it, I don't know. I mean, Glenn Mills, Stephen Francis, and there are others, but these two, of course, stand out because of their charges. But isn't that amazing? I mean, we're struggling now to find a football coach. The West Indies cricket team is having to import coaches from other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering whether or not we're not in a position to export some athletics coaches.
Well, perhaps we are. But this has come about because of policies. As you know, certain policies that have future benefits don't really get a lot of public attention. But from many, many years ago, the policies of having properly trained coaches, this has come about through the activities that what was then the IAAF, now called World Athletics, and the Olympic movement, Olympic Solidarity training courses for coaches and certification. And added to that is the GC Foster College that turns out properly qualified academically and otherwise physical education teachers. All of this is a part of the whole mix. And we're coming from the days when you remember your coach used to be either your father, your uncle, or a cousin, or somebody at school who didn't have any particular training on that. But when you go to champs nowadays, all the schools from deep rural Jamaica, you see young athletes, boys and girls, running with proper techniques, proper starting disciplines, and the whole slew of other activities that make up for the development of the youngster as a good athlete. And the coaching you're pinned on is extremely important.
Well, you mentioned school champs. I wanted to spend a little time on that because I don't know if we can call it the nursery anymore because they are themselves performing at such a significantly impressive level. But, I mean, you look at Edwin Allen, you look at Kingston College, Jamaica College, Calabar, they've kind of fallen off a bit, but they were certainly one of the outstanding athletic schools in past years. I need somebody to explain that for me, Mike. I mean, what is it that is happening at the school level that is producing the kind of schoolboy and schoolgirl athletes that we're seeing?
I don't know if I have the answer to that, but obviously I can tell you from my own days, and I'm sure you can recall your days as well. When you went to school, you had school sports. And you go to your school sports and you run or jump or whatever it is for your house to earn points. And then you have the old students coming back, in our case, old boys and so on coming around, and anybody who would run or do good or get points for you. You're important because winning champs or doing well at champs was such an important thing. That has come about more evolution, how it has come about because that was the main thing we did at school. You had Sunlight Cup cricket, which never garnered the sort of attention that track and field did. Manning Cup football was also always high on the agenda. Because football is a sport which is always a phenomenon of its own. Football all over the world is a big thing. But track and field was something that really the school system was so good that it has developed into a worldwide phenomenon.
And as I said earlier, we mustn't omit in our recognition the sports administrators, people like yourself and all of those who you mentored. We don't see them when the medal is being awarded, or when the cup is being presented. But these are people who are critical to the success that we have achieved, isn't that so?
Oh, absolutely. And, something else, a lot of people don't realize that 100% of it is volunteer work. People see somebody like myself, high profile on this committee, that place internationally, locally, and so on. And people think that it's a paid thing. The whole of my life has been a volunteer effort because I had a job, and luckily I used my leave and so on to do that. But I'm just one of many people like that. When you see a track meet like the Curricular Games we just came out of, that track meet requires around 200 officials for track and field who are properly qualified, properly certified, etc., whether it be for long jump, pole vault, javelin, relays, and so on. And there's a group of those people who come out almost every Saturday to volunteer their time. Now, you forget that those don't appear when you break world records. The athlete is, and quite rightly so, because it's the athlete has broken the world record. But without that support system, such an achievement at the end would not have been possible.
Let us talk a little bit, Mike, about, and I agree with you entirely in terms of what you said, but let us talk for a minute now about management of our athletes. Where are we in terms of once they have reached the level, the international level, they are achieving success? Where are we in terms of the capable management to guide their careers, to determine their appearances, to provide them with financial advice and so on? How are we in that area?
You've touched on what I would consider a grey area that needs a complete review. When I say this, if you go back sometime, a lot of people got scholarships to the USA colleges and so on. It's only a small percentage of them make it through. Another small percentage actually develop themselves academically. And you don't hear about them, but there's a lot that just disappear entirely. You have the scouts that will come down. You have the scouts from the USA colleges and so on, because they earn their money by having good relay teams and good runners or jumpers or whatever it is. And they come down to champs. They come down to some of the other meets. They were here. Quite a lot were here for the curricular games. And they recruit. And then most of those young athletes do not have managers or agents or something like that. And they're almost forced to accept what is being presented to them. And they shy away from the ruling bodies. They don't trust them.
They meaning the athletes?
Yeah. You see, the athletes are given a bed of roses by the agents and these scouts. And many of them do not pay the proper respect to the ruling bodies. And there are people who will provide them with advice. Some accept the advice, some don't. And internationally, it is a problem, not just Jamaica alone. Because you have everybody who sets up a shingle and says they're an agent or they're a manager. And they're good salespeople. And they'll convince the person that they're doing right. And there's a whole mixed bag of good, bad, indifferent managers and agents all around the place. And the young athletes are exposed to them, and some do well, but there are a lot who don't do well and are not treated very well. So as I say, it's a grey area.
How can we fix that, Mike?
The ruling body, the world body, World Athletics, which used to be IWF, attempted at one time to bring this under some control through a form of registration, and form of registration does exist today. I'm not familiar with the details or the legal provisions, but I think more needs to be done. It has to be commenced at the world body with rules and regulations, like you have in football. If you have transfers or the window for transfers, there are certain strict regulations for that. And who benefits from the transfers, the footballer or the agent or whoever. I think something like that needs to be done at the world level. And also, as a part of this, those people who earn good contracts to make a provision for their, what I call after play life.
Yes.
Because everybody has a time limit, and then we hear so many sad stories of what has happened to them when they have nothing after that.
Yes.
And made no provision when they're earning some money. So I think that has to be a part of the mix as well.
Are we doing enough, like through the J3As and through the Coaches Association, even through the school administration? Are we doing enough to at least provide guidance to our young athletes so that at least they can say that they didn't know?
I think all our coaches and teachers and singing involved try to counsel and monitor and to provide as much advice. But as you know, in life, you give that advice when you spend 2 or 3 hours with them, but that same individual goes back home or in their communities, and they have other advisors as well. And that's what we're battling against. But I do feel that we need to ensure that people understand that they have to provide for a time when they're no longer running well or jumping well. And that is not clear, a message that's not clearly understood. And I can understand that, because when I just started working and people said that they invited me to a meeting to discuss about pension schemes and pension funds, my attitude at the time was, that's not for me, that's for the old people. And now I can go back and say, you better start planning for your different stages of life, and certainly for athletes. And I've seen so many of them who were at the top of the pile and end up on the scrap heap.
That's something that we want to avoid.
Yeah.
Part of the focus today I wanted to be, are we doing enough as a country to maximize the benefits of the achievements of our athletes? Is there more benefit that we could wring out of it?
Quite a lot more, because it's difficult to say this, and I have to be very careful when you're on a public program, but Jamaica, as a small country, does not really invest in their young athletes sufficiently. You have other countries, yes, with more resources, but when you become an identified talent and can justify that by your performances at a certain time, you immediately become eligible for state assistance. Now, that state assistance assists you with all the expenses that you don't have to be scraping everything for transport, for physiotherapy, for medical, for nutrition and things like that. And that happens in many countries, large and small, but as a region, we don't do this. The only country in our region that has something like that is Trinidad and Tobago, and I believe that scheme didn't falter a bit. But we really don't invest in our athletes, and our athletes, whether it's running, jumping, swimming, or anything like that, still have to scrape around quite a bit.
Well,
so yes, there's more we can do.
Well, that brings me to the other question I wanted to ask in terms of is sufficient investment being made in the development of our athletes by both government and private sector? And the answer to that, I suspect, is no.
No, absolutely no. There's more that can be done. As you may or may not know, I don't think it's a secret. Minister Grange has asked a number of us to look at what can be done for athletes, particularly those athletes who have fallen on rough times. Can something better be done for them? And that is being looked at. As you would know, they introduced a medical insurance scheme a few years back, and that is actually helping. It's not as good as it could be, but it's a start. And the other thing is that what happens to the regular athlete who is in between games? I know where sits athletes now when they're preparing to qualify or go to the Olympic Games or the Commonwealth Games or World Cup football. But that's only for a small number at that time, and it does not address the needs of the broader talent pool that will need that assistance. And I think that's what we have to pay attention to.
But certainly, this is something that there ought to be, can be. There ought to be some collaboration between the public and private sector to provide that level of support. I mean, we don't need any more encouragement than to just look at how well our athletes have done without it, you know?
Yeah. Some private sector companies have looked at it, but of course, it's difficult for them. They are not experts in this. They're looking at their own bottom line and what can bring them some early returns for sales or services or whatever it is. So that's a harder sell than government.
Yes.
But certainly it's something that I think a lot more people are becoming aware of.
What about the infrastructure for athletics? How are we?
Again, a mixed bag. As you know, we have the National Stadium, which, by the way, is also 60 years old today. And this year, because it was.
Yes, built, I remember.
It was built not for independence, but independence came and was celebrated at the National Stadium as the first or the second event.
Yes.
But we still have problems. We have, for instance, and it's amazing you ask that question because it's a question that's receiving attention. I'm involved a little on the periphery. The Montego Bay Catherine Hall track has been out of service for 3 years. It had a proper Monday service that had served about 4 or 5 years beyond the normal life and just couldn't be used anymore. And since then, we have had no track there. That can't be good.
But how do they
being made.
how do the Edwin Allens and the Heidells, how do they do in terms of their training facilities?
Well, training on turf like that. Quite a lot of people around the world still train on turf, but they have to be exposed to proper surfaces and so on from time to time, and that's why they have to travel and get to various places where there's a track, because as you know, there's a proper track at GC Foster College. There's two at the stadium. Calabar, JC, and KC have small tracks, and of course there are other types of surfaces, but they are exposed to, apart from their normal training on good turf, the various meets. You remember I mentioned how important having competitions that they can attend to. And as you know, back almost every week from starting January, you have a meet that they send these youngsters to. So that helps very much with their training and development.
What about our athletics schedule, our timetable? I mean, we have champs, and there's a lot of focus on champs. Champs comes and champs goes. What happens between those champs and the next champs?
Before champs, by the way, you have a lot of development meets. Almost every Saturday it used to be in Kingston alone, but you now have at GC Foster, you have in Mandeville, and you used to have in Montego Bay at Catherine Hall, but they now come into Kingston at the GC Foster or the East Field at the stadium.
And these development meets would involve what kind of athletes?
Schools mainly, but senior athletes as well. Some of the seniors who have left school and are training with the various coaches around the place.
Yes.
And then you have the Gibson relays.
Yes.
You have the whole series of meets. Even last Saturday there was a Velocity Fest. You know, that's a senior thing promoted, which is important to the development of the athlete, but a meet that's run under proper conditions. I mean, if you run a record on your own, it's not ratified, not certified. Yeah. But at these meets, the importance is that the meets are being run under the conditions that can ratify any times or distances that you may do.
Yes.
And that's one of the differences here. In the early days, the only way you got that by going abroad somewhere.
Yes, yes.
But it's being done right here at home.
Yeah.
I mentioned how important it is. International or competitions that are held under international standards are important to the development of your top-class athlete or footballer, for that matter.
Yes. You know, I was very impressed. I was watching the Carifta meet on well, it wasn't the Carifta. No, it was Schoolboy Champs. I was just watching the champs, and just to look at the kind of equipment outlay that was being used.
Yeah.
You almost got the impression that you were watching the Olympics.
Yes. Yes, and similarly with the Carifta Games, you know, we had this, the timing, the time frame. I think you can recall that you went to a track meet, you didn't know when one race was going to run or when it was, you know, and so on, because nowadays, and this has been brought about internationally because of television. But the television station is not going to broadcast if you're not starting on time, and if you run off schedule for a long time, they have no interest in you. Yeah. Because they have to run to their schedules.
But tell me now, let's say that I'm a schoolboy athlete. I've done well at champs. I leave school. I haven't done so well that any talent scout is running me down, but I've shown potential. What happens to me? What do I do? How do I continue training? What meets are there that I can compete in so that I can improve my skills even further? What's the story?
This is where your manager or your agent comes in. These are the people who know the meets that are available anywhere in the world and who will cover some or all of your expenses depending on your qualification and how you can be exposed to that to help you to make a determination as to whether that can be your career or not.
Yes.
Because if you don't make it there, but these agents help you, they make the bookings, they get you a stipend, and cover in the beginning. If you're not well known, you maybe have to contribute a lot to this.
And these are Jamaican agents you're talking about?
No, there are some Jamaican agents, but a lot of them operate on the international field.
I see.
There are many that are known in Jamaica that
but how do I
are based in England or based in the USA or elsewhere.
Well, how do I come to their attention? Because I didn't break any records at champs, but I came second in the 200 meters. How do I come to their attention?
They will find you. They will find you. Because I said their business.
Yes.
If they don't find new athletes coming on all the time to replace old ones, they don't have a business.
But are you satisfied that we have enough competitions here in our calendar to keep those athletes busy?
We do. But then after we finish our season,
They have to go somewhere.
And 10 relays, they have other meets going on right through to August, September.
Yes.
So if you don't get captured in that, then you're finished for the year.
One of the areas that we had, I remember we had talked a lot about, certainly when I was in office, is we have done so well, in terms of the Usain Bolts and the Shelly-Ann, Fraser, Pryce, and now Elaine Thompson here and so on. Why is Jamaica not a choice destination for athletics training and coaching?
It has been a choice for quite a number of Caribbean athletes and one or two others, but you have to link that with the schooling system. I don't know if you did the last champs, we had quite a few people from other islands who are now going to school in Jamaica. And they ran for their school at champs and then ran for their country at Caristo. I don't know if you're aware of that.
But Mike, what I'm thinking of it, take an American sprinter in Nebraska. Mm-hmm. For 3 months of the year, he has to train indoor. He can't go outside. It's pure snow. I mean, would we not be in a position to provide training camps, even for certain months of the year, where we could bring them, we could learn a lot from them, we could benefit a lot in terms of the income that we could earn? Has any thought been given to that?
A lot of talk has gone on about Jamaica with our climate being training camps, so not just athletics, but other sports. But remember this, if you're a big name, people pay those big names to come to you. They don't pay you. Okay?
Yes.
In other words, if you want a big football team or baseball team to come here and train, to get their name associated with their country, you would have to give them something and, to do that.
But before...
the second thing, let me just mention the second thing. We do not have enough in our infrastructure to satisfy their needs. Mm-hmm. You'll find that we may have a track, we may have a dressing room, but it needs far more than that to do that. Yes. You need, the physiotherapists, your ice baths, your warm baths, your various other things that you use, which you have just around the corner at those facilities in the USA.
Yes.
And thirdly, in those colleges where you run, they don't fund you to go elsewhere. They provide everything right where you are.
Yes, yes. But do you know, for example, whether any foreign athletes, and I'm not necessarily talking about the people at the level of Gatlin, I'm not talking about the Olympic gold medalists, but budding athletes in America. Do you know whether any of them have sought out a Glenn Mills or a Stephen Francis to say, well, okay, I'd love to come to Jamaica and get some training from you?
I can't answer that to the nth degree. I know there has been a lot of inquiry. Your Glenn Mills and Stephen Francis have been sought after by various people, but then ultimately decisions have been made as to what is the total requirements for coming here. There's airfare, housing, whatnot, and so on, and no income. Right?
Yes.
And remember this also, that, and I know this, people will argue with me, but Jamaica does not really have professional sport. And it's not surprising because we're a small island, the level of business development and so on. We really don't have a professional sport industry in Jamaica. We have professional sportsmen and professional sportswomen.
Yes, yes.
But they have to practice their tools abroad in countries that can pay the money.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And that's a fact that we cannot avoid.
Yes. Tell me, Mike, before we wrap up, but tell me now. 10 years ago, no, it's more than 10 years ago, 20 years ago, Tim Montgomery set a new world record for the 100 meters, 9.78.
Mm-hmm.
And then Usain Bolt came in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought that down to 9.58.
Well, Usain Bolt came, you remember it was a Sapphire Power, you know.
Yes, that's
and
right.
Then Usain Bolt broke it, and then he went to
Yes.
Beijing in 2008.
Yes,
And then after that, Berlin in 2009.
yes. Now tell me, are we reaching the zenith? How much lower can it go? I mean, if you look at the women, for example, were it not for, there's still some controversy about that 100-meter world record that Flojo set in 1988. I'm sure you're aware of the controversy.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, if were it not for that, Elaine Thompson would have set the world record last year.
Oh, for sure. There's no question about that. And, Ben Johnson took the fall for everybody else.
Yes.
At the 88 Seoul Olympic Games. I remember that very clearly. And there was talk. And, of course, one has to be careful what you say because, this is a public broadcast. But certainly there was the feeling among so many other people that there were others.
Yes.
But it might have been too many for the survival of the Olympic Games.
Yes.
Okay?
But to what extent, though? I mean, these kind of performances, the Bolt's 9.58, Elaine Thompson's 10.54. How much of that is attributable to technology and equipment? Better technology, better equipment?
A lot of it. There's no question at all about the weight training that's now permissible. You remember the days that if a woman was seen to be lifting weights, she would be regarded as peculiar.
Yes.
And nowadays, if you don't do weight training, you can't compete successfully in any sport.
Yes.
Weight training is more for women and for men. Men discovered it long before. Women are now using it more and more. Number two, I think that the techniques that people have adopted and nutrition, without drugs, proper nutrition, people are developing certain strengths that we didn't think was possible previously.
Yes.
And whether there's something in the genealogy or what it is, that's beyond me. I can't talk about that. But certainly, I think, who knows what is the limit to human endeavor?
But Mike,
there's no limit.
But Mike, at some point it have to stop. I mean, you can't run 100 meters in 5 seconds.
Well, I won't see that day, but you're sure. You're right. You're right. I mean, it just can't happen. But what is that limit? I don't know. I wouldn't even hazard a guess at this moment.
Well, before Usain Bolt did his thing, I would have thought that we had reached a limit, but but he has demonstrated that we didn't.
No, it's remarkable. And this came at a time when, you remember, people were prepared to write him off in 2004.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah,
is that right?
I remember Athens Olympic Games, there were two huge
Oh, yes. You're right.
When we went to Athens in 2004,
yes.
Asafa Paul was the flavor of the day.
Yes.
And he disappointed a lot of us. Usain Bolt was coming off the 2002 World Juniors in Jamaica and was the up-and-coming thing, and he didn't do well in the 200.
Yes.
And there are a lot of people who were saying, oh, foolishness,
Yes.
And then a number of things happened. I don't think time would allow us to go into that. No, a number of things happened. I know it because I was quite intimately involved in terms of what helped him to see through a particular period.
Yes.
And the Glenn Mills arrangement with him was incredible.
What lies in store for athletics, Mike, going forward?
I think the future is bright. When you look at a number of people are saying, boy, we're going downhill now. But when you look what has happened this year so far, after a 2-year gap, I think it shows, number one, that we have coaches and a system that ensure that we can keep people focused and people inspired. Number two, we have the talent, and we have by and large, the facilities and so on that can ensure that we continue to produce champions. What we need to do now is not just sit down and say that will satisfy us for a while. That can only satisfy us for a shorter time than previously, because we have to move on to newer things and see what are the new things that can be done to maintain the interest and to find the funding that's necessary. And that's the key.
And what further contribution to that future can we expect from Mike Fennel? Well, let me just qualify that question by saying your legacy is secured. I mean, no question at all about that. But to what extent is that legacy going to be put in such a position that it can become a tool for further development of athletics in Jamaica?
Well, we try to pass on our knowledge. We try to transfer knowledge. Despite what people may think, we talk with people and transfer them. But then you transfer knowledge to somebody and they only take it for a couple of years. When I went into the GOA as president, nobody wanted a job. Right? When I stayed there a few years and I came back, nobody wanted it. And then when you build it into something, people say, why you stay there so long?
I follow you.
Anyway, we need people to understand that those of us who say we're interested can't be just interested for this year or next year. We have to be there for the long haul, even if we're not president or whatsoever. We have to be more sincere and genuine with our interest in the thing, to stay there and help, whether you're in charge or not in charge. I'm not in charge now. It hasn't stopped me from staying there and assisting. And when they call on me, I help.
Well, you don't leave it at all, because I think all of Jamaica appreciates and recognizes the contribution that you have made. So I want to thank you for that. And thank you also for joining me on the program today. You have brought a lot of value and valuable thoughts to the discussion. Thank you so much, Mike.
It's a pleasure talking to you, sir. A pleasure, certainly. And thank you very much for having me. And I hope it has been of interest to your listeners.
Good. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're talking athletics today, and we've been talking with Mike Fennel. His name is almost a household word in terms of Jamaican athletics and the development of athletics. So that's the discussion today. Our athletic exceptionalism, I call it. What explains it? What more do we need to do to preserve it and to promote it and to enhance it and to see to it that we benefit even more from it? That's the discussion. I'm going to take the break now. I have some formal matters to deal with at noon, but we're going to be back shortly afterwards. Welcome back. It's Jamaica Live. We're on Bridge 99, broadcasting from Kingston. And we're going to be linking shortly with Irie Jam in New York. Today we've been talking about Jamaica's athletic success, our prowess in terms of athletics, particularly in the sprints. I've been so good at the middle and long distances, but in the sprints. And we at the international level, there is absolutely no country of our size that has done as well as we have done. We had a very, very interesting discussion before we took the break with Mr. Mike Fennel, one of the stalwarts in the development of athletics over many, many years. And I'm very pleased now to welcome to the program someone we're trying to get him. Athletics is what we've been talking about. I chose it today, because in the midst of all the criticism we hurl at ourselves, we need to look at where we have done well, and we need to find out what makes the difference. What is it that made us do as well as we have? Some time ago, as you recall, we were discussing Jamaica's music, reggae music, and the extent to which that had become internationalized. The same is true of of our athletics in terms of how well our people have done. And we're hoping to be joined by, well, let me wait until we have him on the line. I was told when I was talking to Mr. Mike Fennel, one of the things that I was pointing out, is the controversy surrounding that 100-meter record, world record, which is still held by Flojo, Florence Griffith Joyner. And there was a controversy which has still not been resolved, because she reportedly clocked the 100 meters in 10.49 seconds, and the equipment that measures wind, because if the wind is above a certain level, then it has to be adjusted. If it's wind assisted, it has to be adjusted. And the anemometer, which is what I believe they call it, that was used for the 100 meters, recorded a certain figure. And the same, or another one, that was being used for the triple jump, which was just a matter of a few yards away, recorded a completely different wind speed. Now, you can't have two different wind speeds in such close proximity to each other. And it was on the basis of that I pointed out that if that other anemometer measurement was used to deal with the 100-meter time, then that record would not have held. And in fact, the world record would now be held by Elaine Thompson-Hera, because she did 10.54 last year in the 100 meters. Very interesting piece of history. And talking about history, my next guest is a historian, a well-known historian, someone who has done a considerable amount of historical research and collation in areas like our political evolution. But he has also done and written on our sports development. Back in 2009, he published something on Jamaican cricket, Jamaica at the Wicket, looking at the history of Jamaican cricketers and their performance and so on. And more recently, in 2013, he published The Making of a Sprinting Superstar, looking at Jamaica's athletic development going back over, from the 1930s, I think. I'm talking about Mr. Arnold Bertram, and I'm very pleased to welcome him to the program. Scree, welcome.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Going on, trying to keep safe.
That's good. We're talking athletics.
Yes.
But there are some superlatives that we can use and some exceptional things. There's no country of our size that has produced the kind of performance that we have produced in athletics.
Mm-hmm.
What's the reason for it? What accounts for it? And don't tell me it's the food we eat either.
No. I won't say that. But just the first sentence you made, that no other country, and where I'd like to begin, is 2011, where Jamaica swept all the world 100-meter titles. 21-year-old Leon Blake won the event at the World Championships. Odale Todd won the gold at the World Youth Championships. Jakes Harvey triumphed at the World University Games. Lerone Clark added the Pan American Games. Although Shelly-Ann Fraser, Pryce, lost her 100-meter World Championships title in 2011, she was still the reigning Olympic champion. The same was true of Veronica Campbell-Brown in the 200 meters. And that kind of dominance has much more to be achieved by an island. So that's at the top. We can come now to the beginning. And as you say, what accounts for it? There's a lot of views. My own research, I trade to way of life and technique. First of all, way of life. Jamaicans, and I would say the overwhelming majority of athletes that I researched, in the first 10, 11 years of their life, walked a lot, rode bicycles, swam. Their way of life was extremely physically demanding.
Is that significantly different from other countries? I mean, particularly developing countries?
Well, I'll add one thing to it. Rhythm. On top of the physical exertion of just way of life, if you take the top man, Usain Bolt, dancing has always been a part of African Jamaican life. We had dance and music for everything, for birth, for death, for celebration of marriage. They say Bolt, as a 16-year-old, I did a 5-hour dance in a discotheque, kind of popular discotheque on any night, apart to the physical. There is something else to that, another factor that needs to be considered. If you look at Jamaica, hill country from Trelawney right through to Manchester to St. Catherine, it is there you locate Usain Bolt, Veronica Carter-Brown, Seymour Newman, and you come right across. And there is something about walking on that terrain which helps to develop muscle. But all in all, I come back to way of life and technique. Technique now begins with the man who I think is just the father of it all, Gerald Claude Eugene Foster, popularly known as G.C. Foster, the first of the great Jamaican athletes, the first of the great Jamaican coaches. Now, G.C. Foster was born in 1885. Grew up in first Spanish Town, then in central Kingston. Swam across the harbor, rode his bicycle, and even when he left school and was working, would do a 3-mile walk up to Orique Hills before going to work. At 16 years of age, he won the first athletic championships held in Jamaica. And himself and his brother, they say, in that meet, this was 1906 now, this was held at Kensington Cricket Club. GC won the 100, 220, while his brother took the 440 and 880. And then 2 years later, he shot Jamaica and the world by running 9.8 seconds, 0.2 outside the existing world record. He was still a homegrown boy.
Where did he do that?
He ran at the Kensington Cricket Club at Athletic Championships.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now, next now, G.C. Foster. And listen now, you come now to the Olympics that were to be held in Britain, 1912 Olympics. 1908 rather, the same year, 1908. He was still working at Administrator General's Department. And it was there that he made contact with one of the leading British coaches. And he developed the idea that he would like to go and compete in the Olympic Games. He bought a ticket on a banana boat, went to England, and thought that was all he needed to do to register and win. Only in England did he learn that you couldn't compete as an individual. You could only compete as a member of a country's delegation. He remained in England, and after the Olympics, got the opportunity to run in some of the post-Olympic meets. And above all, he made contact with the British coach, Harry Andrews, who was then one of the leading athletic coaches. He ran in 10 meets in England and Ireland after the Olympics. Won a race against the American champion sprinter A.J. Northridge. Beat 3 of the Olympic runners who had reached the quarterfinals, and returned to Jamaica in triumph. But he was also an outstanding cricketer. Played cricket for Jamaica at the same time. But G.C. Foster is the man who established that a homegrown, home-trained Jamaican athlete could compete.
Was there any other Jamaican athlete that was kind of in his league at the time? Reason why I'm asking that question.
No.
I want to see whether or not we can find an explanation for, I mean, not just focusing on G.C. Foster's tremendous achievement, but looking to see whether even at that stage we were producing a crop of world-class athletes.
Well, we could have, but remember now, we didn't have champs until 1910. So GC now, whether or not there were, they would not have had the opportunity to be competing for you to know.
Yes.
For the rest of the island, you only ran a race when you have your church fair. It ended up with a little one race.
Yes.
But the idea of a national championships only came in 1906, and only for Kingston. If you're not in the capital cities, unlikely you're going to come from country to run.
And of course, G.C. Foster went on to become one of our early and distinguished coaches. How much of the performance of the Elaine Thompson Heroes and the Shelly-Ann Fraser Pryces and the Usain Bolt, how much of that is due to coaching, Scree?
Well, I come now to technique. What G.C. Foster bequeathed to Jamaican athletics and what survived up to this day is technique in sprinting. G.C. Foster is the first one to apply the principle of the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. All of his athletes he taught to run in a straight line. All of his athletes, he would mark a line on a wall where their knees had to come up in a series of exercises he called 100 ups. But G.C. Foster was, and then as a coach, Calabar never won championships until 1931 when G.C. coached them, and they won 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. He left and went to KC. KC won in 37. Then he went to JC, and JC beat KC and Calabar. And he was there up to 1962, the last year he coached at KC. And if you look at the photograph of the team, you see Lennox Miller sitting beside him. But that's G.C. Foster. The only other person that I put in that league in terms of technique and training homegrown Jamaicans is Dennis Johnson. After Dennis Johnson equaled the world record, and we're all expecting him to break it, in the last race in 1961 he ran against Frank Budd, hurt himself and never ever recovered as an athlete. But when he came back to Jamaica, we thought he would come to Calabar to coach the school again after Herb McKinley. But he declined. He says that his view was that schoolboys will run fast, whether or not they get the kind of coaching. Just by growing, they will run. He thought the challenge in Jamaica was how to get an adult athletic program going. And there is no doubt that second to G.C. Foster, what Dennis Johnson did to get that program going, he's the one, and if Stephen Francis says so, when he came back, he's the one who started at the University of Technology, established the club there. Stephen Francis says he gives Dennis Johnson every credit for what he learned and imparted about coaching. Glenn Mills also credits Dennis Johnson. And between those two, they carry Jamaica to what I call the status of a sprinting superpower. Now, all of this comes down to whether or not now we have been able to coach and develop local athletes here. And there is something I want to point out, and that is in relation to championships, boys and girls championships. All credit goes to Grace Kennedy and Issa for making champs the finest and most prestigious high school meet in the world. But let me just add something. In terms of boys, there has been no correlation between performance at champs and adult athletics. And let me just go in a little detail here. Calabar, Jamaica College, and Kingston College between 1962 and the 1980s won champs every year in all but 5 years. In those 50 years, they won champs for 45 years. The only contribution of all three schools to Jamaica's Olympic medal tally in that period was Lennox Miller, silver and bronze medal. The girls, surprisingly, and somebody needs to investigate why this is so. In contrast, in that same period, the girls contributed 7 gold medals, 15 silver, 19 bronze. The view is that the boys tend to be overworked by age 17, 18, and it jeopardizes their adult athletic careers.
Overworked, you mean overtrained?
And a lot of them were running 3-4 races plus relays at championships and also overtrained without paying due attention to nutrition. Did they have the background in nutrition for the kind of load they were carrying in training? And that raised a very important question. But none of this would have been possible, Bruce, if the paradigm for athletics had not changed from it being an amateur sport to a professional sport. We only were able to move in this arena because you could make a living from athletics, and a good living. As an amateur sport, no matter how good you were, you had to go and find a job.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So for me, those are the big things.
I was discussing with Mike Fennel
Yes.
whether or not we're doing enough to provide guidance, assistance to our athletes. The impression I have, is that once an athlete shows good potential,
Yes.
there are a whole heap of scouts. I mean, they fly down here with a briefcase and a knapsack, no?
Yes.
And they pounce on our athletes.
Yes.
Some of them may mean them well, but for many of them, an athlete is a piece of merchandise. So long as there's a market for it, fine.
You're right on the nail with that. Our athletes, remember now, when they go into the college system, the coach there gets his promotion and earns more money by winning. Whether he overworks this athlete is simply the same theory as slavery. There's more where they came from.
Yes.
So you keep on working them. When Corey went first, they tried to have him running all kind of races from 100 to half mile to get points. It's Lennox Miller who got him into Southern California and got him out of that kind of treadmill. But going to the United States, you also have to manage it against. Can they combine tertiary education or get a tertiary education out of the athletic scholarship so as to be able to make a living other than in athletics? But it comes back down that what we are doing, and it's cyclical, I mean to say, in the 2012 Olympics, one club, Glen Mills Racers Club, won 5 of the 6 sprint medals. The first 3 in the 200 meters, and first and 2 in the 100 meters. I don't think that performance has ever been matched by any single track club.
Can you explain the enormous success of those two? I mean, you spoke about Dennis Johnson's influence on them, but it has to be more than that. What explains this enormous, this tremendous success that those two have had?
Well, let me tell you, first thing, both of them have devoted their entire life to both developing and understanding and imparting technique. I'll give you a detail in terms of Glen Mills, and I'll give you one in terms of Stephen Francis. We all remember that the first time we saw Usain Bolt was in the Junior Championships. And the 2002 World Junior Athletics Championships, when he won the 200 meters. When he was running low, and this is what Glen Mills says, he observed that his head was back. His shoulders were well behind the center of gravity, which resulted in him spending too much time in the air and overstriding. Now, that is the level of observation that Glen Mills had brought to looking at Bolt even before he started coaching him. When he started coaching him, he had a problem with cramps. And it resulted in he making contact with Dr. Fletcher to make sure that he was sufficiently rehydrated to prevent cramps. So apart from technique, these are people who invest an inordinate amount of time in observation and interest with their athletes. And it is the same for Stephen Francis. So it's a combination of coaching, technique, mentoring, which is possibly as important as imparting technique, and getting their confidence level up to know that they are in the best hands and receiving the best attention to go into a race. But the level of mentoring of Jamaican athletes, I don't think is equal anywhere in the world.
How have we been able to sustain the level of dedication? Because it must require a hell of a lot of dedication for these athletes.
Hell of a lot of dedication.
I mean, the rigorous training, the diet that you have to maintain.
Yes.
People. I imagine the coaches perhaps had a few anxious moments with Usain because he's a man who loves to party, no?
No, we don't. No. They say, but it helped the track. They said the 5 hours on the dance floor was a big help to the sprinting.
But how are we able to keep our athletes so motivated?
Well, you never had them so motivated before the incentive of making good money. Don't leave that out.
Yes.
The biggest part of the motivation is the incentive that you can make good money and live a good life. Bolt, Shelly-Ann, all of these big athletes earn far more money than anybody else in any other professional pursuit.
Now,
so that's one big incentive.
Now, do we leave it up to them to manage their money, or do we have in place arrangements to provide some guidance and to settle them, stay away from that one because that one is a shark?
Okay. I don't know for sure. My impression is that most of them have guidance in that way. They have a team around them. In the case of Bolt, these guys have managers. They have a professional team of people who virtually look after them as you would look after any limited liability company.
Yes.
It's not up to chance. Very few are without that kind of support that would make them squander or waste what they have. And we don't see much evidence of that. And in addition, many of them actually give back. I mean,
yeah, they do, yes.
Shelly-Ann,
Yeah, they do. I know the foundations and the work that they do.
Yes. And in time and person, I mean to say, Blake down in Montego Bay there, the community that he's from, you really relates to them. I mean, it's the same thing with Veronica, Campbell Brown, Shelly-Ann. But it's not a matter of staying far and throwing someone at them. Some of these athletes really interact. Interact. But the thing is cyclical. I mean to say, we reached a point where we barely had one finalist in the 100 meters at the last games. This is coming from winning 5 out of 6 medals in one Olympics. The women have maintained with Shelly-Ann and Lane. But the men, we're not there at all. Not there at all. We have made a big transition, however. Our hurdling, our sprint hurdling in both men and women have come on. If we're not in the flat races, 100 and 200, we are very much present at all levels, juniors, seniors in sprint hurdling.
I asked Mike Fennel this question. I'm going to pose that to you as my last question to you.
Yes.
The 100 meters record. Yes. Can it go much further? The time.
Well, let me tell you.
Or are we reaching the limit of human capability?
Yes. There's a view that I remember discussing this with Dennis Johnson. His view was that scientifically the human body won't be able to run faster than 26 miles an hour. But let me say this. What Bolt introduced to sprinting is that, and for the first time, somebody 6'5" could learn to sprint. That is, to have both turnover, which is the number of strides that you take, combined with a length of stride that is unusual. Normally, before Bolt, the average athlete took 50 or over 50 strides to run 100 meters. Bolt did it in 43 strides with the turnover of a sprinter. It is impossible to beat him unless you cut off his foot. So there is a normal limits for normal people, but Bolt proved not to be normal. That he was at 6'5" able to combine a longer stride with a rapid turnover. And they say everybody who ran beside him hurt themselves in trying to match the stride length and the turnover.
Yes. Scree Bertram.
Yes.
Thanks a whole lot for coming on today. I appreciate it. It's been very helpful.
All right.
And of course, as I expected, you have brought a whole historical context to this thing that I think was very useful.
Okay, sir. Good.
Thank you very much.
Good.
We take a break. Welcome back. It's Jamaica Live. We're on Bridge 99. We broadcast here from the studios in Kingston, but we link with Irish Jam in New York. I want to welcome to this side of his microphone, Beauregard. Bo, how are you?
Good afternoon, Mr. Golden. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Everything is all right with me. You know, we're coming off of the weekend, which was Penn Relays weekend here in the United States. It was a very, very big success, I should say.
What an amazing something, eh?
Yeah, very, very amazing. You know, after 2 years of it not being able to attend or the event not keeping, you know, it was good to see all the athletes out. And we said big up to our athletes from our little island, Jamaica. Yeah, they really and truly represented, and I must say hats off to them.
Well, that's what we've been discussing today, because we've been trying to see if we can get an understanding what accounts for it, what accounts for the enormous success that we have been able to achieve, what I call Jamaican exceptionalism. Mm-hmm. And what more do we need to do, because there are some aspects of it that we need to look at. Right. You know, what happens to our athletes they perform well at school level, and some will go on to achieve professional status. But are there others that could have done equally well if we had provided support for them? Mike Fennel was mentioning when I had him on the program earlier that a big area that is not getting sufficient attention is how the athletes, before you become the Usain Bolt or the Shelly-Ann Fraser Pryce, big time.
Yes.
Your nutrition, your medical condition, whether or not you're able to afford the physical therapist that you need to work with and so on. So there are areas that we perhaps need to focus on to try and provide through both the government and the private sector better support so that we can produce it. I would be a happy man, if when you look at all 100 meters final, you have 6 Jamaicans competing.
Yes.
And we are capable of doing that. I mean, if based on what we have done so far, so we just need to turn our minds to some of these things.
True indeed. And in listening to your last guest, Mr. Bertram, you was talking about Mr. G.C. Foster.
Yes.
And I think that, putting some more resources into the G.C. Foster College, which has been turning out all these sports professionals and coaches and managers and physical therapists and personal trainers, and they're all over the island right now helping our youth, trying
and
to
that's a nursery.
them.
That's where the future Olympians are coming from,
Yes, true indeed.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks a lot.
No problem, sir.
Continue to link with you.
All right.
We've been talking athletics today. We're going to be joined now by Mr. Laurie Foster. No, are you serious? I'm being told that we have a special guest. We're trying to track her down. I know she had some difficulties today because I think she's due to leave the island, but I'm told she's online. Our sprint queen, Shelly-Ann Fraser Pryce. Shelly-Ann.
Hello, Mr. Gordon. How are you?
I'm so happy to. I know you had some issues today. You're due to leave the island, so you weren't sure if you could come on. But I'm so happy to have you.
Correct. Thank you.
We've been talking today about Jamaica's athletic achievements. So it's something that all of us are so proud of. Proud of what you have done, what so many of the other stars have done. We've been trying to see if we can get a handle. What accounts for it? And I want you to give me your own experience. You went to school, you were participating in school athletics and so on. What is it that made you stand out so much, Shelly-Ann?
I would like to say that legacy, history, and just representation is some of the key factors in my success because I was able to see it. I was able to see other Jamaican athletes dominate at different levels, whether it was at champs or it was, World Juniors, it was World Championship. So you kind of got the sense that if you were able to work hard and be committed and dedicated like those athletes, then you could have success just like them.
What sustained that commitment? Because I'm sure that the training was rigorous. Sometimes you have to walk past KFC and turn your head the other way. What is it that enabled you to make the kind of sacrifices that you had to make to achieve the success that you did? How did you sustain that over that period?
I would have to say passion. It was something that I was passionate about. And not only that, I saw it as an escape. It was like, this had to work. I have to make this work because this was going to be, something that would launch me from my current circumstances or my current environment and put me in a better position to not only assist myself, but also, my family. So I definitely think that passion and just having that strong will to know that where I was currently wasn't where I wanted to be. And in order to get to the next step, it means I have to work hard, I have to make sacrifices. And of course, I had a lot of persons behind me who shared, similar qualities with me.
But I'm sure that there were some other Shelly-Ann Frasers in your cohort who perhaps had as much potential as you had. But they didn't make it. Why?
I think for a lot of them, it wasn't a passion one. And I think sometimes the parents and other external factors were basically forcing them to get to that point. And I don't think you can force someone to want success and want to, show their skills or to get to that next level. You have to make them want it for themselves.
Yes.
And while you're going to show them the way, you kind of help them, assist them alongside, be in alignment with them instead of basically making it almost sound like you're punishing them. I think that's the reason.
What more do we need to do, Shelly-Ann? And by we, I mean government, private sector, the community. What more do we need to do to expand the opportunities for our young athletes, those in school, those who have left school? In other words, if they have the potential, what can we do to make sure that nothing stands in that way?
I would have to say invest more in the infrastructure, not just the building and the fields, but invest in our coaching, invest in our nutrition, invest in developing the grassroots programs that we have here in our country, because that's the only way we can save more. A lot more of our athletes will decide, okay, then there's proper nutrition, there's proper physical therapy. That is something that is given, or all athletes have that at their disposal, because if you're not going to a high school that have a program that's rich in not just sport, but in aftercare and nutrition for the athletes, then you find that you'll get more from them. But we don't have a lot of that, where we still have programs where are depending on All Boys and All Girls Association to help with nutrition, to help with physiotherapy, to, funding, raising funds, whether they have pantomime or they have cake sale or whatever it is to kind of raise. I think if we're able to invest in making sure that each of these schools, whether at the national level, national program that sees our athletes maybe be given a card or something that, gives them access to physiotherapy, to nutrition, to, sports development programs or coaches as well. Make it mandatory that they go back for some kind of certification, something that will help to advance what we're doing currently, because I think we're lacking in that regard.
It's interesting that you say that, because that's exactly what Mike Fennel said to me when I put that question to him. Virtually the same words,
Yes, I think that will definitely help in making sure that we can have many more of our young athletes who do so well at the junior level. They're able to, take the next step at the senior level.
Shelly-Ann Fraser Pryce, I know you have limited time today. I know you're going off today. Travel safely and continue to make Jamaica proud. You're one of our stars.
Thank you very much, Mr. Golden.
Shelly-Ann Fraser Pryce, what can I say? I don't need to say anything more about her. We're going to be joined now, hopefully, by Mr. Laurie Foster. Mr. Laurie Foster, he's a historian too, In the early days, he was known as Jamaica's best cricket scorer, but he is a sports enthusiast and someone who has a deep recollection. When it comes to statistics, he has the memory of an elephant, and someone who I know can help us to understand what it is, what really is happening, and what more can happen in terms of our athletics. Laurie Foster. Do we have him on? We're trying to make connection with him. But today we're talking about our athletics, our success, our opportunities, what more can we do? Laurie Foster, do I have you on the program now?
You certainly do, Bruce.
Hey, thank you, Laurie. Thank you for joining us. Today we've been talking about athletics. We're trying to see if we can understand. We celebrate. We don't hide our pride in terms of our achievements. A country of our size, to have made the kind of impact that we have made on the world stage in terms of, particularly in the sprint athletics. So we've been trying to see if we can understand what are the success factors, what contributed to it. I don't think there's any one thing. There are a number of things, but it's important that we understand them and highlight them. But also, and this is where I want to provoke your own mind, are we doing enough? In other words, are there more Usain Bolts that we could produce? More Shelly-Ann, Fraser, Pryce, more Elaine Thompson heroes. Is there more that Jamaica could achieve because of its dominance in athletics? Are we getting the maximum benefit out of it? Are we ensuring that greater opportunities are there for our young athletes? You know, the youngster who did well in Class 2 at Champs. Are we helping to prepare a pathway for him so that he could perhaps become the next Olympian gold medalist? Are we doing that?
Well, in your short list of our outstanding athletic talents, we have certainly started with the very best. I'm not certain whether it is reasonable to assume that we can duplicate or triplicate athletes of that caliber. But to be truthful, we are on our way. To respond to your query about what has caused all this, I actually saw you at a launch by Patrick Robinson's book on Jamaican athletics, where he mentioned that the whole question of what we know as champs plays a sterling role in bringing our talent to the fore. This is not to say that all the athletes coming out of champs are able to attain the level that you sought to highlight. I don't want to be stuck with a percentage, but a vast majority of the athletes which go to champs, go to the Penn Relays, go to Carifta, and excel on those fora are not necessarily, yes, they have talent, but a great percentage of them are not necessarily seeing athletics at a very top level as their outlet for their talents. A lot of them enter because of the educational chance to get scholarships and proceed to whatever profession
and I don't
they choose.
And I would not that. I don't think you're knocking that either. I mean,
not at all.
If they can become doctors and engineers and so on, whatever, because that's a means of securing their own livelihood. What I want to be sure about, Laurie, I want to make sure that you don't have a youngster who has shown athletic potential, does well at champs, but after that it's almost like he's at a cul-de-sac. He didn't do exceptionally well, so that one of the scouts who come down here with a knapsack and a briefcase, happened to be running him down. But if he was handled properly, if he was assured of continued coaching, of nutritional support, of the ability to get the kind of physiotherapy that he will need, he could become an Olympian. I get a sense we're not doing enough of that.
Well, most definitely I agree with that. But we have a number of examples of athletes who start very well at the high school level, and for lack of the many things which you mentioned, just not able to put it up or not because of I would not say there's a lack of facility, because there are clubs, and among them there's the Spring Tech, the MVP, and the Racers. And there are others of not as a bigger name of those that I mentioned, but there are others which can provide the outlet. As far as let's say the funding which is necessary, treatment of injuries, that is an area there I think the government ought to see it as their responsibility to shore up whatever little funds can be derived from family and other supporters to do what, as I said, is their responsibility and give the necessary support to that type of athlete.
Yes.
There are those who talk about the private sector.
Yes.
But the private sector in our country seem to have further interest, and maybe rightly so, in what it will do for their bottom line and not necessarily interested in sheer development.
Well, the truth of the matter is that their bottom line and the success of our athletes are not necessarily incompatible, you know?
Well, yeah, but I mean, that would mean risk.
It depends on whether they are forward looking rather than looking at next year's balance sheet, you know?
Right. Well, like I was saying, that involves taking a risk.
Let me ask you something else, Laurie.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Glenn Mills and Stephen Francis. I don't know which university they went to and learned their coaching techniques and skills. Explain their enormous, amazing capability to me.
I was going to say, I would say what I know, that they have not had the benefit of tertiary instructions to lead them on the path where they excel at in such a great way. But I've heard them speak on the matter more so Stephen Francis, that it is all self-taught. It just comes from research, finding the right areas to go to get literature that's involved, traveling with teams to compete abroad, and the exposure to coaches who were at the time on a higher rank than they were, and putting it all together, and then come about the year 2000 or so, they decided that our athletes can benefit from remaining on local base and preparing themselves for international competition just as effectively as they would have done and still do by getting scholarships and going to universities abroad.
25 or 30 years from now, will we have any Stephen Francises or any Glenn Mills?
Well, there are younger coaches who are, you have O'Keefe Stewart, who has based himself at Camperdown, and of course you have this Sprintec boss over at GC Foster, and they have certainly shown by putting talent on the international scene that they too are capable, and the type of benefits that coaches can get from producing top class athletes has been upgraded in the last 10 years or so. That it is a live incentive to have those younger athletes stick to the task of preparing top class athletes. And I don't think that there should be any failure on the part of the younger coaches to pick up the slots when the Glenn Mills and the Stephen Francis have passed from the scene.
In terms of future development, Laurie, let us say that, we had $100 million to spend on athletics. And we're not going to divvy it up and spread it all around. What would you consider to be the priority areas? We were discussing earlier, I think Bertram was pointing out. No, it wasn't Scree, it was Mike Fennel. No, I'm getting mixed up. I think it was Cree. That in terms of facilities, JC, KC, Calabar, you may have mentioned one other, have good, professional running tracks. Many of the other schools don't. Where would we spend that 100 million? Is it at the secondary level to beef up their infrastructure and their capabilities to strengthen their programs in terms of nutrition, in terms of ensuring that they can send their injured athletes to a physiotherapist? Or is it at the post-secondary level where we don't want these high school stars to simply disappear into darkness, but we want to continue to provide them with facilities? What do you think would be the priority if we want to enhance our athletic achievements?
I think you have answered your one question in part. We have to, by virtue of the fact that Central Jamaica has produced athletes of such high quality over time that have gone to the highest level. There needs to be facility in that area. I mean, you have the very technical, you have the Edwin Allen's, Homewoods, and they don't have, I mean, if they want the benefit of a all-weather track, they have to either go to Montego Bay or come to Kingston. I think they're definitely one of the priorities for that spend would be to put up not only a track, but facilities of high class where they can get remedial treatment and for injuries and that type of thing.
Yeah, and for the weight training and all that kind of thing,
Yeah, sure. Those are standard facilities if you want to produce athletes at the highest level.
Yeah. But let us celebrate. Let us give thanks for what we've achieved so far. But let us not just rest on those laurels. Let us continue to focus on what more can be done to enhance that, and let us also look at as we are both agreeing, the level of support that we need to provide at that early level to really bring out the best in our youngsters. Laurie Foster, thank you so much for joining me today. We're at the end of the program, so
my pleasure.
Really want to thank you.
Bruce.
Yeah, man. We've been discussing athletics today, our athletic success, what accounts for it, how much more success can we look forward to achieving, and what we need to do to achieve that, and also how can we benefit more. I think that there is a synergy that can be found, between our athletic success and tourism. If we were ready to look at it in terms of its ultimate potential. But that's it for me for today. We're at the end of the program. We'll be back next week to do it all over again, to take on another issue, Jamaica Live on Bridge 99.